Go to this one now.
These are microwave fires. These are fires using directed energy weapons. This is a whole new fire now because they can, and they are. There's no more normal.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. That was the expert in this area of research, Deborah Tavares. It's been far too long since we've had her on, but the Tubbs fire in Sonoma County, 5,000 homes lost, the Paradise fires, the Camp Fire in California, the Ankara fires in Greece, fires all over Canada. Friends, this is the new normal, and none of it is normal at all. Thank you for tuning in. Spread this one far and wide. Before we start, just a quick word about our sponsor. Millions of Americans could be hospitalized if power goes out this summer or fall. And if that occurs, households could be left without much needed AC during the hottest time of the year. This is why I recommend grabbing the Air Blast Pro as an alternative to standard air conditioning and as a way to beat the money-hungry power companies. The Air Blast Pro is a 2-in-1 standalone fan that has the power to make a room icy cold in just minutes, making it a potential lifesaver in an extended blackout. The best part is it's ultra quiet with blades that make less than 30 dB of noise. Get the Air Blast Pro today to receive up to 66% off plus 100% lifetime guaranteed replacement. Use promo code July10 to get an extra 10% off as well. Order now by going to airblastpro.com or just click the link in the description below this video. Hey friends, welcome back. Thank you so very, very much for tuning in. Friends, I feel like I've been saying this in just my last 3-4 interviews, another emergency broadcast, and it's really true because the war against humanity continues to only ramp up, and the voice you just heard was that, of course, of Deborah Tavares, StopTheCrime.net. Deb is on the line, but before I bring her on, guys, I just want to make you aware, of course, of the work we've been doing in this space for years. Deborah Tavares really leading the charge. And if you go over to my site here, thephaser.com, and you click GeoWatch, the tabs below open up, and you can click Agenda 21. And what do you see right at the top here? No water, no warning. Maui residents confront public serpents. Scroll down here. The Maui Dew attack looks just like cars on 9/11. Another great report. It just goes on and on and on. Years we've been covering depopulation, climate change, and weather weapons. Friends, also on thephaser.com, you will find real news and I think real education that you're never going to hear from MSNBC or CNN or the Mockingbird horror media. News like this. Listen up.
So in the midst of diving into all the major wildfires happening around the world, I happened to come across Ankara. 1,200 people have been evacuated as of yesterday. Now, this is interesting. I might be able to shed some light upon this and open people's eyes a little bit to connect the dots. If you haven't been with me, as of my previous videos, then you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. So I fully applaud you going to check those out. If not, I might be able to put the puzzle pieces together in this one specific video so you can gain some clarity upon the situations happening around the world and what's actually being implemented and coming to play. Now, do keep in mind before we get into this, Ankara is private owned. Okay, this is all private owned land. Same as Athens, same as Larissa. They are not federally owned land, right? Now, Athens and Larissa just got through their worst fire to date to ever happen. And I want you to think about this, okay? Athens and Larissa are on the same list in Greece, right? To be implemented into smart cities by 2030. Ankara just so happens to be on that list as well. The more and more I dig, the more and more I find, and the more I see that the easiest way to get rid of old private-owned land, old infrastructural land, right, that does nothing for you but just pollute the area, supposedly, the easiest way to get rid of it is burn it to the ground, right? Burn it straight to the fucking slab so you can build whatever the hell you want, whenever the hell you want, and it's no longer owned by anybody. Now, as you can see, a little sketchy. The initiative will streamline access for Turkish partners to the most innovative smart city solutions that the U.S. companies have to offer and be executed in cooperation with the U.S. commercial service. Wow. Now, as you can see, the first 2 smart cities that were awarded grants right there in front of you. These projects reflect not only our continuing commitment to a broad and dynamic portfolio in Turkey, but also the best of our team's ability to connect innovative U.S. industry with trusted overseas partners. What? Land grab. Do keep in mind this is pretty interesting. The pilot includes the installation of a customized AI-based software platform. You know who owns that AI-based software platform? BlackRock. Their specific AI is called Aladdin. If you want to look into it and see what it does, it'll probably open your eyes even more.
All right, guys, I'm going to pause it right there because I got to tell you, the expert who's been covering this for more than a decade, is Deborah Tavares, stopthecrime.net. Guys, I'm happy to have her back right now. Deb, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much, Sean, for having me on. This is really an emergency broadcast. And why it is because of what we're going to share tonight. Not only what has happened in Hawaii, in Lahaina, but in Paradise. And here in my town, in 2017, with what was called the Tubbs Fire, Tubbs fire, that burned over 5,000 homes in one night. So yes, I am Deborah Tavares. I run the following sites: stopthecrime.net. That has become my main site, where you will find the opportunity to get email blast outs. And as I go over some of the blast outs that I've recently sent, I would recommend you sign up for those. If you have not yet, you can go onto the tab, emails, blast outs, and you can look at some of the recent ones that I will be discussing during this broadcast today. I also run primarywater.org. And water is a renewable. We are not running out of water. Now, we are sadly being terminated from the accessibility of primary water because of the CIA. And I hope I will have a moment or two to get into that. And we may need to do another show, Sean, on water, because water is being terminated. Water is being terminated, and it's being replaced by water reuse through the EPA that is already working nationally and internationally to require that we all drink water from wastewater treatment plants that are chemicals and biologicals, urine and fecal material, and many, many toxins of undetermined concerns. That is to be our water. And in fact, there was an executive order requiring that we transition and build more wastewater treatment plants because of the droughts. Now, again, we are not running out of water. We have pure, clean, new water that is continuously created down below the mantle. We just have to look down for water and discount rain and snowmelt. That's atmospheric toxic poisonous water. Then I also run the website toxicsky.org. It is a site I originally started when I was falling into the endless pit of weather change done by those that can change the weather. Many call it geoengineering, many call it chemtrails, and atmospheric death dumps, but don't ever call it climate change. Not ever. It is the intentional recreation of the weather on all levels. I also have on toxicsky.org a recently found video or film that Michael Murphy did before, and he was killed before this film could be released. He released 2 films prior. What in the world are they spraying, and why in the world are they spraying? And I would highly, highly recommend that you look at his unfinished 3rd documentary entitled Unconditional Gray.
Unconventional Gray. Unconventional Gray.
Unconventional Gray. And the Un is in caps for United Nations. So Unconventional Gray by Michael Murphy. It has been missing since 2016. It was to be buried forever. The year Michael had planned to release it, again, was in 2016. It builds a picture of how geoengineering, not the climate change, cover story leads straight to the United Nations Sustainable Development. Carbon's Agenda 21, Agenda 30, the massive master plan. In fact, geoengineering, with all of its political muscle, is the price of admission of world government, as well as the biggest transfer of wealth to the rich ever. So you can find and share and preview this film everywhere. Send it far and wide. Hold meetings and watch this film. You can get to it again on my website, toxicsky.org. It's posted at the top. Right underneath the film, you will find more about the dead and dying plant material worldwide by Rosalind Peterson. who was a very, very good friend of mine, and died suspiciously of cancer. And I knew Rosalind very, very well. She actually went on her own dime to the United Nations to tell them to please stop changing the weather. Rosalind was a USDA lost crops claim adjuster, and that's when she discovered that the loss of crops was as a result of poisons in the atmosphere. So again, stopthecrime.net, primarywater.org, and toxicsky.org. So I want to jump right in to what everyone is talking about right now, and of course that's the burn of Maui and Lahaina. And I'm talking out of deep sorrow and reactivation of what we lived through here in 2017 with the burning of Sonoma County, Santa Rosa specifically. And we lost over 5,000 homes that night. That was called the Tubbs Fire, Tubbs. We were getting calls from our family members to come and help them evacuate. And we were driving in towards the fires that night to help our kids get out. And we were watching just lines of cars under the evacuation on their own. I want to describe a little bit of that night so that you will all understand what is happening with weather weapons worldwide.
Deb, let me interject and just ask and be clear here. So the Tubbs fire was in Sonoma County. You say 5,000 homes lost. We need to remind people of those other horrific fires, videos from which went viral of people driving through a hellscape trying to escape. Many didn't escape, and those fires, I believe, were in what? Paradise, and there was one called the Camp Fire, correct? Which part of Cali were those in?
Yes, there were many fires since 2017. The first and the biggest one was the 2017 fire. And we did investigations of Paradise. We went up there. We found that the smart meters were contributing towards the pulse frequencies, which caused blow-ups as well. So there are many reasons for the fires, but I wanted to dive into this first. What happened that night of October 8th, 2017. Now, October 8th, at around 10 p.m. at night, was the late hour of when our fires started here, which actually started the following evening. Well, the evening. At 10 o'clock on October the 8th of 2017, one of my friend's sisters was frantically trying to call them from over 2 hours away, because on the news they were reporting horrific fires in Santa Rosa.
You hear that?
When they finally got through to the family member here and said, "What is it? What's going on?" They're reporting horrific fires in Santa Rosa. My friends had heard nothing
You hear
about
that?
fires.
The people at
They
the
called
fire zones
the
weren't
Santa Rosa
warned,
Fire
just
Department
like in Maui.
and 911, and were told there were no fires.
This reminds me of Maui, right? The people are totally
No,
trapped.
no, Sean. Yeah. Okay, what is most important about what I am just saying is what I will just say now, and everyone needs to listen carefully to this. Don't let mind control and short attention spans stop you from hearing what you're going to hear me say right now. So the night at 10 p.m., October the 8th of 2017, reports were going on media over 2 hours away that Santa Rosa was burning. When some locals in Santa Rosa called the fire department here and 911, the report was there were no fires. This is like the reporting of the Building 7 that fell during 9/11 when
Listen.
the broadcaster was standing with the back to the window saying that Building 7 had fallen, and it had not. This was a release that was out of timing. So about 2 hours later, without any alerts, with no water, without any police or fire on the mountain at all, it was a complete stand down. There was a patrol car that drove by, And by that point, there was a lot of ash and heavy smoke, and people were rousting up that had been asleep. And they went out, a couple of people went out to the patrol car and asked, what's going on? What do we do? And he said, I'm not authorized to tell you. And they said, well, we're people. We have families. What would you do if you were us? And this officer said, I would evacuate immediately and don't take Mark West Springs Road. Now, many of you geographically won't know about Mark West Springs Road, but it was the road where the fires came over the mountain through the valley, and it was going to clog up. And this officer knew
in
it
advance.
was a stand down.
And all these
At
people
10
were
o'clock
murdered.
On the evening of the 8th, there was a large presence of about 50 different law enforcement, all gathered
Told
in a
to
parking
stand
lot by
down.
a coffee shop.
Disgusting. And they
No
followed their
one
leaders
went up that
and
mountain.
killed innocent
There were no
American
sirens,
civilians.
Nothing. The people were on their own, and most people narrowly got out with the flames lapping at their heels, and about 20 plus people died. There was an abandonment of a senior care facility where all the employees left, and those people were gotten out by evacuees. It was a nightmare. We housed a number of evacuees on our property because they were not allowed back on their properties, just as what we're seeing in Lahaina and just what we saw in Paradise, because the military goes in there and they clean up their attack zone. They clean it up. They won't allow us back there in the site because it, of course, was a crime scene, a pre-planned crime scene. We also had busloads of looters bust in to the area, and they were looting. Somebody wrote a book called Point Control, and how
Who's
they
running our
stayed
country?
in
The
their
cartels?
with hoses
What is going on here?
put out the
I
embers.
knew those fires were
Their
set.
biggest threat were all the looters. They
But wait until
broke
she
on the
starts
road.
telling you about
Looters
the
will be
heat.
shot. And they
The way
had
the fires
a
were
shovel,
heated up was
and
by
literally they were having to
electromagnetic
stop looters.
energy. It wasn't like the old style fires. The heat was different, which she'll talk about.
These are pre-planned attack zones. So what do you do in an attack? You turn off communications. In the instance of water, you turn off water. You don't warn anybody. And you don't assist in evacuations. As a matter of fact, you hinder the evacuations. I have on my website one of the most terrific things that I understood later, and it is posted, and it is in an email blast out that I'm going to be talking about in a moment. But I learned that evacuation zones are military.
Did you hear that?
I'll cover that more in a moment.
Evacuation zones are run by the
A
military.
few things that we're dealing
Total
not
control.
only with Maui, but with all the fires. And I'm seeing a greater influence of this potentially.
It's disgusting. They all play dumb. They should be held accountable.
I will say this. Many people are unable to understand these are attacks. This is the use of weather weapons. I would urge all of you to look at Unconventional Gray, share it with people, and just understand we're all under attack, more than just with fires and floods and hurricanes and tornadoes and earthquakes that all can be created and are, but we're under mind attacks as well.
Now she gets into
I'm
it.
going to go over a couple of things.
Directed
And,
energy weapons.
Sean, I know this is going to be horrendous, but it all is horrendous.
Well, we know how horrendous it is because we're going through it.
Directed energy weapons, because we're hearing a lot about DEWs, directed energy weapons, that manipulate and debilitate, such as wave energy weapons, genetic weapons, psychotronic weapons, and more. And I want to suggest and ask this question. Could we be blind to the mind-altering advanced uses of directed energy weapons to control our behaviors, our decisions,
I'm not blind to it.
and our beliefs?
All the people suffering from V2K aren't blind to it.
Many of the people to wake up.
And all the people being manipulated by these frequencies with sound, cicada, and all that aren't blind to it.
Let's talk about this for a minute, because I think this leads into a greater understanding of.
You're wonderful, Deborah Tavares. You're wonderful.
We're all facing worldwide with famines and increased refugees and the horrors of fleeing war-torn countries.
The truth seeker.
Set upon for war. So let's talk quickly about
Tavares, not Tobias.
methods and systems.
Deborah
of altering
Tavares.
consciousness, because they're U.S. patents as far back as 1992, and even in February of 1994. And the methods and systems of altering our consciousness talk about the systems that stimulate the brain.
Go back further than that.
And waveforms to alter our state of consciousness. And I've talked about electromagnetic frequencies for years. And we have to understand that part of what that is monitoring. Interference is one of the most insidious and secretive of all methods used by the agencies against all of us. That's why we have increased chaos between family members that understand what's happening and people that are understanding a greater degree of what's happening and people that have understood for some time. Let's talk about microwave weapons, a hearing system. And those are patents in 1989, and hearing devices. And they've told us that the first known experiment with microwave voices was conducted by Sharp and Grove in the early 70s. And the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Advanced Research Project Agency, are principally to blame for the abuse of these technologies, since Project Pandora, etc. And the CIA's Langley Research Center, as well as numerous scientists working in the Energy Defense Department labs across the United States, are all responsible. Let's talk about brainwave monitors. And why I'm spending time here is because I know so many individually targeted individuals that have been brutalized and experimented on for decades and decades. And I can say this, by and large, experimentation is over. Our minds, our brains are hacked and will be hacked further.
Yeah.
So brainwave monitors and analysis. Listen to this. When the brainwave pattern of an individual is detected from the use of one or more numerous types of detectors, such as a satellite,
Satellite.
brainwave signals are sent to a monitor with a computer. The
I
brainwave
knew
patterns
it.
are interpreted through a brainwave vocabulary.
I knew this already.
It records the thoughts into words. This is pre-crime. This is what we've been talking about
Satellites.
all the time with Palantir, and the fact that Palantir was already set up in New Orleans and in all the major cities after the hurricane in New Orleans. The NSA monitors the brainwaves of their targets by satellite and decodes the evoked potentials that the brain emits. So using lasers, satellites, and high-powered computers, the agencies have now gained the ability to decipher human thoughts, and from a considerable distance, almost instantaneously.
Considerable distance.
So we're on your site right now, stopthecrime.net, category mind control. Victims of China's electromagnetic mind control tech provide testimonies, seek help. You know, I think we're so far down the rabbit hole already in this conversation that I would like to ask you here in the half hour we have left to perhaps redirect so that we can talk about the pressing issue that is now waking up people in Maui, waking up people in Greece with the Ankara fires, this smart city agenda, United Nations Agenda 2030.
These demonic
And I wanna talk
forces
to you.
that have taken
You're the expert.
over.
I really want your opinion on what happened.
It was in
Maui.
World War
So,
II.
no
I'm just
warnings,
following
no
orders
sirens,
as people are
roadblocks,
being
people couldn't
murdered.
get out,
I'm
no
just
water to fight
following
the fires.
orders, but
And
I
that's
want a
just for
paycheck.
starters.
I got to
A lot
feed
of
my
folks
family at the
presenting
expense of
evidence
everybody
of
else.
directed energy
What kind of
weapons,
crap is that?
cars unburnt,
You should
blue
always
shirts found unburnt,
follow the
umbrellas
truth.
found
and do the right thing
bridge over to
through
the
God.
wildfires here at some point here? I just wanted to make.
Don't give me your crappy excuses to murder and torture other people. I don't want to hear it. You're guilty.
And then I'm going to point out what we need to understand.
I mean, anybody behind these crimes against humanity, they're guilty. I don't care if they're paying you to do it or what the excuse is. You're choosing to do a job that is murdering other people. What kind of human beings are you?
California, we were screaming from the rooftops about all of this being an intentional attack, using lasers, using boots on the ground, drones. We were watching all of this. In fact, from one of the cameras mounted on the many hills here, if you type in CaliforniaAlert.com or AlertCalifornia.com, you will see that we are carpeted with cameras. And someone overseas was using those cameras the night of one of the fires that started, and they saw a laser starting the fire.
A laser started the fire.
We'll get into that, but here's what I do want to say. And this is very, very important, because we have to think about the missing kids. We have to think what happened. Are we talking about spontaneous combustion? Yeah, we are talking about spontaneous combustion. We're talking about cremation. We're talking about dustification. We're seeing it. So we have to understand this. Every single thing and person on earth has its own unique frequency signature. A frequency can be pre-calibrated and directed to a single person, even in a room of many. Or take the example that I saw about a crime scene that was solved by finding mud in the criminal murderer's shoes that had some pine needles in it, embedded in the tread of the muddy shoes. And they took it to a lab, and they were able, Sean, to identify the exact pine tree and the location and solve the murder. Now we have to understand, all life now, all of our bodies are packed with nano-sized, highly conductive, combustible heavy metals delivered by chemtrails for more and over many decades. And that's why the plasma fires burn so intently, because of dustification. We're seeing years of heavy metals, highly combustible materials on the ground, and elimination occurs without traces. We're seeing buildings dustified. We saw the same thing here in all the fires here. We find that laser targeting can be pre-calibrated to destroy structures and not the surrounding trees that have a different frequency. And it's important to understand that according to the microwave warfare expert Barry Trower, whom I interviewed, frequencies can be used to turn anyone into an assassin in 3 days. In 3 days. So what we have to understand, people are reporting that the trees aren't burned, they're fine. They're not fine. They're dead and dying because of the years of clogged up small roots that can't uptake water when it's given, very seldom, and it's toxic to begin with. But they're all dead and dying.
Yeah, everything's dying. Well,
We
let me ask you this.
could
Let me
thank
jump in
the
and ask you
shadow
something
government and
here,
the deep
because,
state
when I
for
have
all
about
these
47
crimes
minutes,
against humanity
we're
and
showing
our environment
video
destroying
right
this
now
planet. And
of
if people
car
don't wake
in an
up
isolated
and get out of
area
their zombie
over there
state,
in, Maui,
we're gonna
where the
lose.
fires hit. And
We're
there was
gonna
about one
lose
city block
this planet.
that
For the
got
animals and the
absolutely
people,
zapped.
it'll just be a
2 cars
shell of what it
completely
was
melted.
once.
The alloy wheels melting, literally a river of alloy metal running into the grass. And it's just a 1 block area. The houses around this area, untouched. Can you just help us understand what normal forest fires, what temperatures do normal fires burn at? And then what temperatures does it take to melt the alloy wheels on a vehicle?
So Sean, I think it's very important to state there are no more normal fires.
Right.
We have been so heavily, literally covered with heavy metals that there is no more normalcy in fires. In fact, we have electric fires. We have a whole new system of fires now, not as we ever thought. And when we see the lasers pass by, we can see where a width of a laser passed by, burning a few cars and not the houses next to it. And in an instant,
Isn't
too,
that
making
horrible,
people
people?
notice that there was
These
a dog or an animal
excuse
that
me.
was under one of
These
those fires. All
criminals
you saw was the
are
hair.
killing harmless,
Now, this was a
innocent
normal
children and
The hair
people
would
and
have been
animals in
burned
the
up.
environment
The hair
at
was
will.
in that, or under the car. I think it's the one that you're talking about right now. So we have to understand.
This is what
all
Dr.
calibrated,
Stephen Greer sees.
because everything
This
has
is
to
why
do with frequency.
people need to start
That's
calling
what
their
we're
senators and congresspeople and say,
We're missing the
hey, full
You know, I think you said something
disclosure.
very important.
It's
There are
all
no
about the
more
shadow government
fires.
and full
But if we just
disclosure.
rewound time
All
and we
these
went back
weapons
50
they
years,
have,
100
they're
years,
using
the
illegally and
temperatures
treasonous.
of a normal
So they don't have a
brush
right
fire
to
or even a
classify
forest
them.
fire are far lower than what we're seeing in these current types of fires that are pulverizing vehicles and melting the alloy metals and making them run like a river. So far, far, far higher temperatures.
These are microwave fires. These are fires using directed energy weapons. This is a whole new fire now, because